Hello and welcome to my channel. Here I review new television shows and movies and try to release a new review every day from Monday to Friday. Today I want to go over the new series Make My Day. It's a Japanese sci-fi thriller with heavy horror action and drama elements. Just as a heads up, it's been translated into quite a few languages, but I'll be talking about the version with the Japanese voice acting. The story was written by Yumiko Yoshizawa, the series was directed by Makoto Honda, and was created by Yasuo Otagi. The story follows a young guard named Jim, voiced by Masaomi Yamahasi, living on a frozen prison world. The prisoners there mine an ore called Sig, in return for time off their sentences. When a rescue team goes missing, Jim and his squad head into the mine looking for survivors, only to find an ancient species of creatures have awoken. Beings called the Swarm, which look like giant tardigrades, attack and devour all of the humans and begin destroying the planet one section at a time. We follow Jim on his journey to escape the planet and watch as he forges new alliances and protects the people he loves while finding the courage to choose his own path. Along the way, he meets an eccentric cast that helps him survive while he teaches them to be better people. There are lots of horrific moments, explosive action sequences, and highly dramatic and tense interactions. As a whole, it feels more like a drama than an action or horror because it tends to focus more on the relationships between the characters than the action or horror at any given moment. The series starts off with a strong horror setting, but makes a joke about how cute the monsters are in episode 5, and from that point on loses all of the horror vibes. It's explained by the characters becoming more familiar with the Swarm's weaknesses, but it still feels a little jarring how quickly they stopped being a threat. The action is also interspersed with a lot of drama and tends to take a back seat to it even during climactic moments. There are chase scenes, scenes of the soldiers trying and failing to fight the Swarm, and scenes of the protagonists successfully killing them. At first, the humans struggle to fight back, but by the end, they manage to put up a solid defense, and it almost seems comical how much the tides have changed. The Swarm goes from being indestructible to being cut down like fish in a barrel. The action sequences are a lot of fun, and there are some cool moments, but a lot of it is dripping in super extra machismo. Like at one point, there are two men yelling at the top of their lungs as they mindlessly blast a horde of enemies with lasers. It's hilarious, and after everything the Swarm has done, it's kind of karmic. It's just silly how easy they made it look. Each episode is 26 minutes long, and the 8 episodes combined add up to about 4 hours in content. The entire 8 episodes tell a complete story, and each episode is one leg of Jim's escape from the planet. From time to time, they'll rush through a sequence or skip parts of the journey, but for the most part, we get to witness Jim's journey from beginning to end. Over the course of the series, Jim grows as a person, but more than that, he builds amazing relationships with the people around him, and brings out the best in the worst. His relationship with Walter, voiced by Kazuhiro Yamaji, is one of the best friendships I've seen in a long time and gets across quite a few amazing lessons. Don't judge a book by its cover, treat people the way they treat you, the importance of forgiveness, and how much more we can accomplish together. These are just a few of the lessons the show tries to build into Walter and Jim's friendship, and I think they managed to teach them in a way that didn't feel forced or in your face. The show introduces us to Walter and doesn't tell us much about him on the journey, but when it finally does reveal his history, we're meant to question his character. Jim has to make a tough choice and ends up making it based on Walter's actions, and it said a lot about both of their characters. When it pays off for Jim, it feels so satisfying. The entire relationship between them is great. Outside of his relationship with Walter, Jim also has a great relationship with his father figure Ed and his neighbor Marnie, voiced by Ayahi Takagaki. He ends up drawing inspiration from Ed's example, and he and Marnie end up on the journey together. They have great chemistry, and there are a lot of beautiful moments between them. Jim doesn't just draw on the good people around him, he also gets rotten people. Self-serving and prejudiced people that take every opportunity to screw everyone else over. They mistreat Jim and his friends and everyone else. But when Jim shows them his good side, all of them end up softening up and showing the best versions of themselves. The show takes a very nuanced approach to people's behaviors and pushes the idea that forgiveness and good behavior is the way to change the wicked. It is incredibly sappy or corny at times, but it comes straight from the heart and ends on a positive note. The story does run into a lot of tropes and cliches like the robot that Jim names Casper, which has an Iron Giant style storyline, or the number of times the exact thing they need just appears in front of them. These parts tend to get a bit of an eye roll from me, but some of them were well executed in the story. Like Casper showing free will at the end and how well it plays into the idea of him being a ghost in the machine. Cast does a fantastic job of getting the emotions across with nothing but their voices. Jim's a bit of a whiny hero, but when he's crying or getting emotional, it's hard not to tear up alongside him. That's how good of a job Masaomi Yamahasi is doing. When Jim finally hits his stride, Yamahasi injects a lot of strength into his voice and fills the role well. All of the voice actors in this cast did a fantastic job, and I couldn't believe the depth of emotion they managed to portray. Visually, the monsters were terrifying at first. The way they grabbed hold of people, broke all of their bones, and then ate them only to poop them out moments later was terrifying. However, once you realize how they work, they become significantly less terrifying, and by the end of the show, they're just another creature that you could probably work around. The real monster was that giant worm at the end, but they didn't do anything with it, at least not this season. The art style is reminiscent of Clone Wars and Arcane, but doesn't quite match up to either. It works well for the subject matter because it's cartoonish enough that it's not disgusting, but it can still be terrifying, like the shot of the monster drilling through the female guard's helmet into her nose and mouth. It also works well for emotional moments later in the series. You can see the guilt and shame that the characters are feeling through their expressions, and there are moments when you can see the characters reflected in each other's eyes. The soundtrack was mostly made up of generic instrumental background tracks, but there are a few moments in each episode, like during the robot fight scene in the last episode, where the music is playing some orchestral, John Williams-style tracks, and my god do they come in perfectly and hit like a Mack truck. It seems like there's at least one of these moments in each episode, and they feel like they're scored moments. Overall, I really enjoyed Make My Day, and I hope to see more from this team. The story was cheesy and sappy, but it also tells a moving hero's journey and has a lot of cool action sequences. 8 out of 10.